Not only is there more velocity on the bomb, but the point of impact is such that the bomb certainly isn't going to ricochet and will certainly penetrate and get through to the subsoil under the runway.
Closing on the target, the air electronics officer turned on the Vulcan's powerful electronic countermeasures equipment to jam the enemy's fire control radar, which was trying to lock onto the bomber. 2 miles short of the target, the bombs were released.
There was nothing that we could actually look down and say, that's Port Stanley and there's the airfield. But again, it didn't matter. The Vulcan has been designed to drop bombs by radar from day one. So from my point of view down the front, all I was doing was following electronic steering information, left, right, and in front of me a little needle was ticking down the range to bomb release.
20 seconds later, they hit the ground.
Our feeling was we were taking out a military target in a military operation, and I certainly had no moral qualms. I don't think anyone else in the crew had. If they had, they certainly never spoke about it. We were perfectly happy with what we did. We'd have done it again.
One struck the middle of the runway. This was sufficient to render the airfield inoperable to Argentine jets that were such a threat to the task force.
The Argentinians would be aware of what was happening in the sense that, first of all, the frontline strength of the Royal Air Force is never a secret. It can't be in a society like ours. They were well aware that Vulcans would be employed if we were going to bomb the Falklands, in the same way as obviously Harriers would be involved from the carrier. They were also aware of the capabilities of the Vulcan, and our initial plan was certainly for low-level raids. This was subsequently modified when we discovered the Argentinians had installed fairly sophisticated anti-aircraft weaponry. The only other aircraft physically capable of carrying the 1,000-pound bombs were the Buccaneers. And in fairness, the Buccaneers were probably a more capable aircraft with a better bombing system. The problem, as I understand, is, as on many jet engines, when you're lubricating the rear turbine, the oil is destroyed in the heat and is subsequently dumped overboard. And all jet engines lose something in the order of 3 to 4 pints an hour, depending on their size. Now, the Vulcan was designed to fly for a very long time and has got an oil tank which can tolerate that kind of loss. The Buccaneer, designed to fly comparatively short sorties, would have run out of oil for its engines after about 6 or 7 hours. One of the things that we discussed as aircrew was the possibility of operating the Vulcan over Argentina. Now, not to drop bombs, that would have been a political disaster, but just to show the Argentinians that we had the capability of getting through the defences, which I'm sure we did. And if you were an Argentinian civilian, if you suddenly hear a bomber whistling over Buenos Aires, big Delta Wing aircraft 3 o'clock in the morning making a lot of noise, we've got your attention. And one of the things that would have made the Argentinian Air Force do, as they did to a very large extent, is hold back their aircraft for home defence. Now, the Mirages, which might well have been escorting, were in fact being held back for defence of the homeland, and the only aircraft they were being held back for was to defend against the Vulcan, which is another contribution the Vulcan made to the Falklands War. Very definitely. One of the things that did strike me, I was involved in Desert Storm. I was flying one day with the VC-10 tanker. We had 2 Buccaneers on the right wing there to do the laser designating. We had 3 Tornadoes on the left wing, each I think with 3 1,000-pound bombs. So counting the tanker, we had 6 aircraft to drop 9 bombs, which is fine, and it worked very well. But I couldn't help but think at the time that the Vulcan could carry 14 laser-guided bombs in the bomb bay. They were slightly longer than the ballistic ones, so only 14. We could certainly have got 3 under each wing on the pylons, so one Vulcan could perhaps have done 20 bombs, probably 2 sorties a day. I think it's a shame in some ways we didn't have the Vulcan for Desert Storm. I'm sure it could have made another contribution which would have been well worthwhile doing.
The operation to deliver 21 1,000-pound bombs to Port Stanley Airfield had taken a considerable effort out of all proportion to the bomb craters inflicted. But the effect of the attack on Argentine Air Force thinking and its combat capability was also out of all proportion to the damage.
So after I left the Vulcans, I was on 44 Squadron when we finally folded. I did a 3-year tour in training, and then I was posted to the VC-10s, where I currently am on 101 Squadron, which is the VC-10 tanker, and by coincidence my first Vulcan Squadron when I joined the force in the very early 70s. because our role then was part of the British nuclear deterrent, and our targets obviously part of the Warsaw Pact. The way we intended to deliver the weapons was low level. By day we would fly the aircraft by hand, looking out the window as low as we dare go, I guess 50 feet. Our training, we never went below 300 for safety reasons, but operationally I expect most pilots have been well below 100 feet. At night or in bad weather we had a special modification, a terrain following radar, and you didn't need to look out, you merely followed, again, electronic steers in the cockpit, and that was selectable as low as 200 feet. The entire mission would be flown at those sort of heights, and obviously the weapon, when released, had a long time delay built in before detonation to allow the Vulcan to get clear of the effects of the blast. Unlike the Americans, who used to maintain an airborne alert with nuclear weapons, that we never ever flew for training purposes with the weapons on board. They would have been loaded prior to dispersal to our bases in the event of a war. How people felt about it, it's difficult to say. It wasn't talked about, it wasn't discussed. I think it's a question of having faith in the system. We did not believe we would ever be released to drop those weapons except in extremis, presumably following a nuclear exchange which another country had initiated. I don't know anybody in 9 years that I was on the V-Force who ever had any qualms about the job, and I don't